Hello you guys, and welcome to today's video. I'm so excited to have you here. So today we are going to be continuing on in my Where Are They Now series, which is where I interview ex MLM reps from all different MLMs. So today we are going to be interviewing someone who was mainly in the MLM Primerica, and I do not have a video on the MLM Primerica yet. I've never done a dedicated video about them. I have talked about them a lot in my MLM horror story series, so I'm very excited to get more insight with talking to this individual on their experience in Primerica. I also believe that they were in two other MLMs. So we'll kind of be talking about their experience with why they joined multiple MLMs, what made them do that, and then kind of their experience in Primerica. With that being said, this person did not want to show their face in the video, so I will have them blurred out and they will not be using their real name. They'll be using an alias name. So I just wanted to let you guys know, I'm so excited that she even wanted me to interview her because I know she does want to stay anonymous, but at the same time, she really does want to speak about her experience. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's interview. I'm going to start off the interview with asking, one, who are you? I know you're staying anonymous, but who are you? And really, what is your story on how you got wrapped up into multi-level marketing companies?
So thanks so much for having me on, Deanna. My name is Lee, and I was a part of a MLM called Primerica. I do watch quite a few of the anti-MLM channels, and I noticed that Primerica is one of the MLMs that is not addressed as often. So that's one of the reasons why I'm really glad to be on here to talk about that. I also had a job that I want to touch upon briefly, that it wasn't an MLM, but it was kind of set up with a similar recruitment model. And since the whole idea of this is education and kind of trying to stop people to fall for these scams, I would love to talk about that briefly as well.
Yeah, you can totally talk about that, the whole job scam, because there are those out there.
This job, it was a business. I'm going to say business. It was a business technically, but it was run by this person who lived closer to me, and he had an office. And what he would do is that he would advertise in legitimate places, LinkedIn, whatever, Indeed, Glassdoor, etc. And the way that the job was worded, it would say something to the effect of, we are a high stakes advertising company. We work with important clients like Nike, Pizza Hut, and it would list all these very reputable companies. And so I read this and I think it said something like, we are now hiring entry-level sales people starting at $70,000 a year. So I'm new to the area. I'm in my early 20s. It was like no experience, which should have been a huge red flag, but so it was like no experience required. I'm like, oh, great. This is me. I want to make 70. So of course I called the number, red flag number 2. The lady asked me like 3 questions. She was like, okay, well, great. Do you want to come in tomorrow for an interview? And I'm like, sure. So I go in, and they talked to me for about 5 minutes, and they're like, oh, well, you know what? We would love for you to shadow one of our leaders. Now, let me just tell you, they say this to everybody. There's no selection process. There's no vetting at all. Okay. Everybody's accepted. So what this job actually consisted of was you and a team of people, you and your leader would go door to door and would sell coupon books. And this also the thing done with this with magazines, but you would go door to door and sell coupon books. So when they would say you would shadow your leader, you would go out with the person and you would sell these coupon books, and it would have coupons in it like Pizza Hut, Nike, NFL, whatever. It was so shady and so misleading. And you would sell them door to door and you would get a commission on that. Now, it's kind of like an MLM in a way that you had to recruit people below you. So basically you would recruit people to sell under you, and they would recruit people. And it was like a model. That was the only way to make money, because I think we got something like $12 a book, which, you would sell maybe like 10 a day. There's no way to make even close to a living on that. Even if you have a good day, right? Impossible. And so that's basically what it was. And I stuck with it because I didn't have a job and I was desperate, and I was just trying to make it work. And they sold this idea that, if you only get 15 people under you, that turns into 50, and then they'll be making so much money. Of course, it never happens because nobody wants to do that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I would join. What would happen is every day I would come in, they would feed me new people that came in to interview. They would feed them to me from the office. They would go out with me. They would maybe stay for 2 or 3 days, and then they would, of course, quit because nobody wants to do this job. And I did it for about 6 months, and I had like 3 to 4 people under me at the most, but they always would only last a few days. So yeah, it's sort of like an MLM because, like I said, they sell the dream. That's all they talk about. They never talk about the products. It's based on a recruitment model. That's the only way to make money. And yeah, that was it. And they put you in a lot of danger because people got in weird situations and they never really dealt with it. So it was a weird time. But yeah, I finally was like, I can't make this work anymore. And my mom was trying to be nice and supportive because my first time moving out on my own. But she was like, Lee, yeah, this isn't working.
Well, it's just crazy because that reminds me of Cutco, where you do like door to door.
Yep.
So that's wild. And then for Primerica, so how did you get involved in the MLM? Did you have any prior MLM experience that kind of led you to Primerica?
A little bit. And it's an interesting story, kind of what led to Primerica for me. But so my parents were in Amway in like I believe in the early 90s. And my dad is a preacher. So he was very what's the word I'm looking for? Ethical with it in ways that he absolutely refused to try to recruit anybody from his congregation. So he did do that. He was like, that's a power imbalance. And we only recruited people outside of it. They were fairly successful, actually. And then he ended up being deployed. And so, of course, that ended. You understand, as a military spouse or formerly, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So he was deployed. And then, of course, his group wasn't kept up and it fell apart. But they were actually doing really well. They're on an upward trajectory. So I had a positive experience from that because I saw success. And I saw the group every week that they had, because they had the group meeting at their house. Then the second experience that I had was very brief. I was on prepaid legal for about, I didn't really do it. I did it for maybe like a few weeks. I think I sold one policy, but I was like, oh, I don't really have time for this. But I never saw the failure. So when I got into Primerica, I figured, okay, I just have to stick with it, and put time into it. It will work. Because I thought these things work. Yeah, but they don't, as we know. But do you want me to talk about, now you want me to talk about how I got into Primerica?
Yeah. How did you get involved with it?
So I had just gotten fired from a job. It was really difficult. And I got fired from this job in the worst possible way. It was so traumatic. I was literally going on vacation, with my best friend. We were on the plane. My boss calls me. The plane is on the tarmac. And I'm like, okay, she's about to take off, but my boss is calling me. Let me talk to her for 2 minutes. So I pick up the phone. She puts the HR lady on the phone, and the HR lady proceeds to fire me 2 minutes before the plane takes off, going on vacation. So I couldn't spend any money on vacation. It was terrible. And I tried to enjoy myself, but it wasn't great. So that was really traumatic, being let go that way. And it was really upsetting. And I was really, really depressed, after that. I had nothing. And so, I had savings, but, it was hard. And so I was looking for a job, and luckily my parents, who have always been just the best for me, were kind of supporting me so I could still live by myself. But they're like, as long as you're trying, we'll help you. So I was looking for a job. I was in Starbucks one day, and this guy is kind of looking at me. I'm like, oh, it's kind of cute. And, I thought I should. I'm like, and, unfortunately, that was not his intention. He walks up and he's like, hey. And he's like, and I can't remember what he asked me, but he asked me, he complimented some random thing. I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. And he's like, you have a really nice smile. And I'm like, oh, thank you. So thinking this guy's kind of flirting. And he's like, yeah. And then he kind of moves into, oh, I work for this business and I like people who smile. But I think back about this, Deanna, this is so cringy. Okay. But at the time, I work for this business and we need people who have positive energy. And I'm like, okay. And so, my dumbass is like, well, let me hear what he has to say. So I sit down, we start talking over coffee, and he tells me a little bit about the organization and this and that. And I sell, insurance and financial services. And to me, I thought that this was like an insurance agent, like someone that works at, Allstate. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. But in the back of my mind, I had a feeling that it was like one of these MLMs By the way, I did not know anything about MLM. Like I knew kind of what they were, but I didn't see MLMs as negative in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was like an Amway type of job possibly, but I didn't really know. We talked for a few minutes. He's like, meet up. Why don't we meet tomorrow? And I'll get more in depth. So I meet him the next day at the same Starbucks. He gets more into depth. He tells me about it. I'm like, oh, this sounds cool. I'm still thinking it's a legitimate like insurance company. And then he's like, okay, come to the office the next day. The office was about an hour away from where I lived. Remember, I have no money. Okay. I'm broke. I'm unemployed. I'm getting unemployment, but that's not a lot. So it's about an hour away. So I drive there, and this is the funny part. I went to when he sent me the email the next to like, this is how you get to the office and these are the links about the Primerica. He put the wrong name in like the dear, and he put Chris. And so it was clearly like a form letter, and it was like, this guy doesn't care at all. But I was like, oh, whatever. So I just, at the time, yeah, it's so bad. Like I'm thinking back, I'm like,
it's like such an MLM thing where you forget to delete the name because you're doing so many copy and paste messages. Oh my God, that's funny. But you wouldn't have known that. So you're just like, oh, maybe he sent it to the wrong person. You wouldn't have thought about that back then.
Right. I didn't realize that I was just a number and that there was no selection. There was no standards. Like he was just a warm body to come in. Basically, it's how this works. And so I go the next day, and they had this they called an opportunity meeting where they like sell the opportunity. And so my direct upline's name is Andrew. So he's what who recruited me. The upline, like the district leader over all of us, his name was Sammy. And he's been in the business for like 16 years. So he was actually making money. He was one of those people who was actually making a living on it. One of the few. And so there's another guy whose name is Brandon. He was the speaker. So we went to this opportunity meeting, and Brandon got up and he did like this rousing, like, welcome everyone. And he would like clap after like everything, after the most asinine things he would say. And he'd be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Who's excited? Everybody claps. And it was this room of like 50 people. After that whole thing happened, they talked about the business. They talked about success. They called out people who had success. And they took me upstairs, and that's when they went in for the kill. And they brought in this guy, and his name was Mike. Okay. And he was like right below Sammy. He was on my team. So it went like Sammy, Mike, and then my upline Andrew. So Mike was the closer. He was really good at closing people. So he brings me upstairs and brings me to an office, and he manages to talk to me. And the fee was $100, $150 or $103 for one-time fee to get in. I checked this just now. And so I had to pay that non-refundable for the business license. And then I had to pay, there was a website fee that was like $28 a month. So you don't have to use the website, but basically you kind of do, because you can't really see anything about your business. Like you need it. You need it to.
That's what's crazy, because I still see people say that. I think I reacted to something recently and someone was like, you don't need to pay the fee. Yes, you do. You can't see anything. You don't have access to customers. If you recruit somebody, it's a necessity. So when they say you don't have fees, every MLM has a fee. And normally most MLMs have that like back office fee. So I can't believe it was $28 every single month for you.
Yes. And so that is, and there were other fees that we could talk about as well. That went on later when those come up. But yeah, and that's kind of how I got started in. And I pretty much dived in immediately, full steam ahead.
It makes sense though, because you said you were going through, like you just got fired. And anyone who's in that situation, if you don't have something else lined up afterwards, you are in that like fight or flight mode. You're really trying to find something, and it would make sense. You would go full force because you're sold. If you do this, this, and this, you can make it, you can make this amount of money or whatever. So it definitely makes sense why, when you were in that position, you would decide to go like full force with it. And it definitely shows time and time again when I talk to people how everyone's story is so similar, but similar in the aspect of you were going through a hard time or something happened or you got fired or whatever it is. So it's kind of crazy to hear that was also your story. So with that, do you remember like how high up you may have gotten in the company? I always ask that because people are always curious how high people got in the MLM.
So I got to the senior, I think it was the district rep, and that was like the third one up. And so And here's the funny part. I think I can't remember the exact numbers, but you had to have like 5 people on your team or 3 people on your team or something like that. And the permanent people, I think the total was 5, but the permanent people I had on my team were my mom, my dad, and my brother. Everybody else who I recruited never lasted. And it was, of course, a never ending hamster wheel to keep bringing people on. And I never got past that. But I did. The reason why they had like a fast track bonus thing where you got an iPad, which I managed to get, and you had to recruit 3 people. And I recruited those 3 people. I just named 3 family members, and I sold like a few policies, one to my dad and some others. And that's basically it. But yeah, I did not get very far because it just like nobody would stay. It never ended.
Yeah, it's the hamster wheel of recruiting is what I like to call it. And you're always having to fill those holes. Always. There's always like, well, this person quit or this person went inactive because they're not buying products. So now I need to fill that hole, or I need to ask them if they could pay for a product so that, I can maintain my rank. It's always just this hamster wheel of recruiting. So with that, did they actually promote at all? Like, hey, sign up family members, or was that kind of something you just knew because I know your family had experience?
Oh, 100%. They were like, sign up family members, sign up friends. So I want to talk about a key difference between Primerica, and this is relevant to your question, and a lot of the other MLM, is that the first thing this is the similarity. The first thing that they would say when I went the first day, because in my email, I was telling you, I worked about 18 hours a day, and most of it was pounding the pavement, looking for people in random stores and malls and stuff like that. But that's another story. But when I first started, for like the first couple of days, they had me go through my Facebook, which that sounds familiar. And I would send everybody messages, which I was absolutely terrified to do because I didn't want to embarrass myself. So they were like, go with your hot market, contact your aunt, your grandma, your mom, your dad, which I think all these MLMs do, your best friend. So of course I went to everybody in my family. Most of them were not interested, but with this, you would do basically, because you're selling insurance, and to be fair, Primerica is actually a really good product. That doesn't make it not the MLM is still terrible, and I would never recommend buying it, but the product itself is good. So the insurance is good. So if you knew how to sell it, it was not the hardest thing to sell. People were in the market for, or if they were willing to listen for insurance. So they would encourage you to go on with, your leader, they call it leader, your upline, and to schedule meetings with as many of your family members in hot market as you could to start off with, so you can get to that fast start bonus. And that's exactly what I did. I recruited family members. I got my fast start bonus to have 3 people in like 30 days. Right. And a couple of things I wanted to add was this was in like 2017. So this was before, you and Chelsea and all of you all were really prominent, Kiki Chanel, before there was a lot of YouTube videos about the MLM community. Of course, I would have watched them because I would have thought it was propaganda, but this was before all that. But I got to tell you one thing. So Brandon, the one who always did the presentations every week, actively said, and I quote, "This is not an MLM," and it's a straight up lie. It's a both. It wasn't even a suggestion. He said Primerica is not an MLM, and I fully believed at the time that Primerica was on MLM. Didn't research it. Just was like, okay, because the product itself is good and the insurance is highly rated. So I was like, this is a legitimate product and it's on MLM. That's what I thought.
That's crazy. Because I do hear Primerica reps say that. Like I've had a couple comics, they'll do like an MLM horror story here and there, and they will be like, it's not an MLM. I'm like, it is an MLM. If like the high up reps are telling people, hey, this isn't an MLM, and people aren't educated on MLMs and don't know how to research them, they're just going to assume it's just a product.
Agreed.
So with your time in, I know you talked a little bit just now about how much time you spent. So go over that if you would like to. How much time do you feel like you put into your MLM daily and weekly? And then looking back, was it worth it? Was the results you got at the end worth what they expected you to put in?
So I put in probably anywhere between 60 and 80 hours a week. So remember, I had to drive an hour to get to the office with no money, by the way. Like I said, I was getting unemployment, so I was barely scraping by. An hour to get to the office. I would start off with, going on like LinkedIn, because our leader, Sammy, the one who was kind of, the one who made a lot of money, he had a LinkedIn account that he paid for that we used. So I would spam people on LinkedIn for like maybe from like 9 o'clock a.m. to like noon, and get maybe, like 3 or 4 people that agreed to do an interview the next day. Then I would have lunch with my direct upline, Andrew. We'd talk about our goals and stuff like that. And then for the rest of the day to like 8 or 9 o'clock, I would go to various malls, strip malls, college campuses, outlets, go from store to store, walk up to random people, start a conversation, and then, introduce them, like say, hey, well, I have this business opportunity that you'd be great for, give them the information about the office. That had a pretty low, as you would imagine, turnover rate, but I would get some people. And then usually that evening, like at 9 o'clock, basically you had to be certified. And this is what made it seem even more legitimate as a business. You did have to be certified to sell insurance. So you had to pass the test. I can't remember what that was called. The insurance test for your state that any insurance agent has to pass. Additionally, once you pass that, you could sell investments and financial services, and you had to be registered with FINRA, which is the regulatory body for financial services. So that was legit. You did have to take that test. Of course, you paid for that yourself. That was your own, out of your own pocket. The company not paid for that. You had to pay for the study materials. And I don't remember how much it was, but it was hundreds of dollars. And then you had to pay to take the test because there was a test fee. Before you got the insurance license, your upline would always go with you and they would sell it, but you would get like money for it. And then you had to pass to go out independently. And then you would, once you got securities, which was a little bit more lucrative, then you would be able to sell like investments, stuff like that. But anyway, I'm off on a little bit of tangent, but that's all important. So anyway, so back to the time. I'm saying all that to say, I would usually spend from 9 to midnight doing some type of education, studying for the tests. Sometimes Sammy did like study halls where he would basically teach a class and help us to learn the test. And so he would do that sometimes. And then on Tuesdays, I would, that was an opportunity meeting. So I was always at those. And then on Saturday morning, there was also an opportunity meeting. So I would come in on Saturday as well. So yeah, so that was basically what I did. So like I said, 60 to 80 hours a week. No, it was not worth it. Not even close. I was working so hard. I was getting nothing out of it. There was a story that I told about working so hard. That was like motivation. And my Sammy wanted me to repeat it so many times because it was such a great story. There was one day where I went out and I had in my mind, I was like at some outlet mall and I was on a hot streak. I had gotten like, 4 people to give me their numbers that day. And I was like, okay, I'm going to like work until I get to 10. And I stayed at this outlet mall until 10 o'clock. And then when that didn't work, and then I went up to 8. And then I went to Walmart, a 24-hour Walmart, and stayed there until 2 o'clock in the morning until I got 10 people. And I was so proud of this. I was like, I didn't give up. I kept going. And he had me stand up at the meetings and like tell that story several times. It's like a motivational tactic. When I think back, that's like not okay at all that I was doing that. But,
and they promote, I would call it like hustle culture, where they make it this big thing that, it's great that you're doing that. So they promote how amazing it is to pretty much overwork yourself to the ground for literally nothing to put money in the pockets of the people above you. And then you overwork yourself and run yourself into the ground. And then the meetings too. And the fact that you went into the office, I think that is even crazier because most MLMs are virtual now. You don't really see that like, you have to go into the office and all of that stuff. So I feel like that also probably showed you a little bit more legitimacy to it. To be like, I'm going into the office every day and I'm getting, on these calls and, now they want me to speak up in front of people. So probably made you even more kind of motivated to keep going. I don't know if you feel that way, but it feels like that could be.
It was true.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't go into the office. Some people just went to the opportunity meetings, but there was a group of people that went into the office every day. I was one of them. Going into the office wasn't necessarily super common, I want to say, but it was encouraged. And I remember Sammy used to go to people and used to be like, so when do you want to switch to doing Primerica full time? He would like put those little bugs in people's ears. Like, I don't know. And he tried to like get them to, do it. And so
Be like, never,
yeah.
Sammy.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So you said looking back at what it just wasn't worth what you put into it.
No, I put so much. And the really unfortunate part about it was, so when I was filling out my unemployment, remember, I was making like no money. Okay. So I made maybe like, $50 a month, like $60, $100 a month. But I was working many hours. So when I filled out unemployment for like that week, I put in the number of hours that I was working for Primerica, which actually made me no longer eligible for unemployment. And then I called them and tried to explain, well, this wasn't really a job. This was just me, like, and they were like, no, and I couldn't get it.
No.
I had to pay it back.
Oh my God. Well, that's good to know that we can tell people you had to pay that back.
I did have to pay it back. So I didn't know I was doing anything wrong. When I ended up getting a job after all of this, it didn't catch up to me, fortunately, when I was unemployed. It caught up to me after the fact. And they're like, well, now you got to pay all this money back. And I was like, oh.
Okay, so we can kind of lead into money aspect of things. So having to pay that back in general, but the fact that you probably weren't even supposed to be getting it, were you even making anything in the MLM after like expenses? Or you can even talk about things you had to spend your money on or any expenses that they would make you spend your money on.
This is something I really wanted to talk about because Marco, he talked to a Primerica leader. And one of the things the Primerica leader was saying was that, you don't have to pay anything. And what this Primerica leader conveniently left out was chargebacks. What those are is if a person cancels their policy, you have to pay back the money. You got to pay back a fee, you as a distributor. Now, all of my policies eventually that I sold, and it wasn't that many. I think I sold the whole time I was there. I want to say maybe, and this is over a 6-month period. If I'm being like optimistic, 20, let's say. Okay. And they all canceled except for my dad eventually over the years. Cause remember, this is like since 2017. So my upline, after I left the business, my upline, or not my upline, but Sammy called me. And cause I think my upline had quit by that time too. Sammy called me. And he was like, Lee, I need to tell you that you need to pay back these chargebacks, this amount. It's like, $500. And he said, in Primerica, here's the really good part, Deanna. They actually encourage us to sue to get our money back. But I'm not going to do that because you're my friend. So I'm just going to tell you this is the amount that you owe, and you could pay me monthly or weekly or whatever. We can work out a payment plan. Yeah. So this is something that they do not mention this. They don't mention this at any of the opportunity meetings. They don't mention this when they recruit you. They sort of mention it like later, very casually in passing, but at least my group, maybe others do a better job, don't mention this. So yeah, it was not good.
So would it be kind of how when people would want their money back? So say they do pay for the insurance or whatever, and then they actually say, oh, they want a refund or something within that refund period. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. So basically, if you're paying monthly and then you cancel, and let's say, your insurance might be $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever. I, as a distributor, have to pay back whatever you would have paid that month.
For you said it was $500?
That was the total that I ended up paying.
Okay.
For like a bunch of different people that had canceled, something around that. Pretty much what happened. And like I said, because all of the people canceled that I recruited, except for, I believe, my dad, eventually, that was just an accumulation of money that I ended up having.
I'm so sorry. That is so messed up.
So think about that. I worked 80 hours a week for 6 months and ended up in the hole.
With all of that, you said you ended up in a hole. So you didn't end up profiting after your MLM.
Not even close.
And with that also, I do like to ask people, with the money you did make, where did you find that mostly came from? Whether it was like bonuses or actually selling the product or recruitment, like where did you see yourself getting paid the most? Even though I know at the end you lost money.
So I would say I only got one bonus, but I would say from the commissions that I got from the revolving wheel of people that came in and out, because I didn't sell very many policies. So I always had 3 to 5 people, but it was always a wheel. So I kept up a good number of people, but yeah, so definitely from the commissions from my downlines, I made the most money for sure.
So with that, when you were in your MLM, did you make any friends, or kind of how did that go? How was the culture of your MLM? You're smirking at me.
I'm so
You're so
Okay,
ready for
so
this one.
I am. It's just bizarre when I think about it now. Okay, so basically, this MLM is different than a lot of the other MLMs, Arbonne, Monet, whatever, because it is not mostly women. It's mostly, I won't say mostly men, but probably mostly men, but it's pretty even. And so basically it's like I'm going to use this term loosely, but this is the best way to describe it. It's like a high stake business culture. So it's like hustle, work hard, play hard type of culture. So in our office, there was Sammy and there was Brandon. Like I said, they were the two top and everybody else was underneath them. There was a total of maybe like 100-ish people in the office. And they had a lot of leaders under them that were pretty high up. So they were making really good money. They were looked upon like gods. And I'm not even kidding you. They were looked upon like they were put up on this pedestal. So the MLM, literally, the culture of this MLM was like Sammy and Brandon are the be all end all. You listen to them when they walk in the room, everyone's like, oh, and I'm not even kidding. It consumed every single thing that you did. And even more so because it wasn't just a bunch of girls on their phone. It was people coming into the office. We would go to happy hours often. We would do activities. We would, and like, we would go out. We would go bowling. We would go to lunches. We would go to brunches, which nobody could afford, by the way. But, we would do all of this stuff. And so it was like this core group of young, youngish people, 20s and 30s, who were just like wanted to be, these high rolling business people and would just hustle, go out, work from, until midnight, go out to like the whatever bar, get drunk, come home, do it again the next day. It was like that a lot.
Did you find that like with that, because of like doing so many things where you're going out, that you actually made like genuine friendships while you were in the MLM?
I would say no. Now, to be fair, I would say that I think that there were definitely, as with all things, there were definitely people in the MLM that were sincere, that were kind, that I believe did see me as a person that I was friendly with. But no lasting friendships. I mean, I didn't call them when I left. They didn't call me. People didn't check on me because I kind of did the fade out. I guess we'll talk about how I left eventually. I kind of did the fade out. I didn't really announce I was leaving. I kind of just faded and stopped being active. But nobody called me. Nobody asked where I was. And believe me, I was like 100% in. So I was there and then I wasn't. And nobody asked about me. And that's kind of how it was. It was like, these so-called friendships did not extend outside of the MLM, I think.
So with all of that, what was really your ending point with the MLM? Like, when did you finally be like, this is it? Like, I'm just done with it.
So, I wasn't making any money. Was working super hard. I was one of those people who was like, if I just work hard long enough, eventually it'll, come through. And so I was always listening to these things. So these things, push this work hard long enough and, you'll eventually succeed. I was always listening to those. So I really had it in my mind that it would work out. And eventually I was just like, I cannot live like this anymore. I'm not making any money. And even when I left, when I immediately left, I didn't really leave with a bad taste in my mouth. That happened a little bit later. At the end, thought, okay, well, I'm leaving because this isn't working for me and I just don't have time anymore and I'm starting a job. And so I'm going to fade out. And at first I was like, well, maybe I'll do it every once in a while. And then after a while, it started clicking about how predatory this thing was. So yeah.
Is there anything about the MLM that you feel looking back, like that was shady, or no, you don't feel like there was anything?
Definitely. The shady part about it was the way that you would approach people and start conversations. You would, I would usually be in a store. I remember one of the people that stayed with me longer was this guy named John. And I think he stayed with me in the MLM for like a month. And he was like my longest person other than my mom. He worked at this like baby store. And I just made up this like, oh, I'm looking at clothes for my niece, which was a complete lie. And then I started, I do have a niece, but that was a lie. And then I started like this conversation with him and talked him into coming. And so I would do stuff like that all the time. I would like think about something to just say. And I remember this one time, and this is so humiliating when I think about it. So I met this guy at this bakery and he agreed to come in. I think I said the same thing. I'm like, oh, you'd be great at this job. You're like he had like this really bubbly personality. And looking back, I think this was kind of like a people pleaser type of personality because I have that as well. So I don't know if he really wanted to do it. I think he just kind of felt pressured. And so when we went in, I was trying to close him to join. And I was like pushing him so hard. I was like, all right, give me like, let's talk about this. Okay, so give me 2 names of people that you can reach out to today. He's like, no, I didn't really want to. And I'm like, then give me 1 name. And I was like being so terrible and mean and just like kind of like berating him almost in a way. And he just was sitting there kind of like shrinking away. He wasn't very assertive. Yeah. And then it was really bad. And then I sent him this email after, and he, fortunately, when he escaped, he's like, yeah, I don't really want to do this. He wrote me this long email kind of apologizing and justifying why he couldn't do it. Nice person, people pleaser, probably never wanted to do it, but felt really awkward at saying no. And so, yeah, I mean, those type of shady things happen all the time. The guy who was the closer, Mike, the one who closed me, he was hardcore. He would go in and he would be like, so why don't you want to do this? Like, he would just straight up like, but this makes sense for your life. This is what you're doing. Do you want to be successful or not? Like, he would say stuff like that to people. And I would just be like, oh my God.
So it seems like this was taught though. Like it seems like this tactic of how to get people in was taught probably to you. I feel like that's why a lot of people in MLMs do what they do, because they see, well, that person's making X amount. And so they're saying, I need to do this. And you kind of do things that you probably wouldn't normally do or say. And so do you think that that was really taught to you to kind of be that way?
Yeah, 100%. It was like, be this hard-nosed, cutthroat, strong, assertive, kick-ass businesswoman, as if this is like a good thing. And it wasn't,
Yeah.
It was 100% taught, 100% encouraged, like never give up, never take no for an answer, keep pushing, basically, harass the person into joining when they come into the office. It was like, basically, I remember like one time Mike said to me, he was like, how did he put it? This is super shady. But at the time I saw this as being a tough business person, he was like, have them take out their credit card, okay, and then say like, oh, it's only this much, and then put your hand out. And so they'll naturally just give it to you and then just say, okay, and then just scan it.
So it really seems like these people wanted you to go after individuals who are like, I don't want to say gullible, but people who are, they don't want to say no to people.
Yeah, it was like the 2 leaders and everybody was just young worshipers of them, basically, that they had their little like admirers. That's how it was. And
that's crazy too, how much they worshipped, like using even that word, but like they worshipped the people at the top.
It's accurate. Mm-hmm.
Meaning that they would do anything pretty much that they would say to do.
I mean, it was literally like, when they entered the room, it was just like everybody got quiet almost. It was really, really bizarre thinking back.
Like, with all of that, I feel like we went over a lot of good things that I didn't even know about the MLM. So is there anything else that you would like to tell us, or kind of any advice, maybe if you had any advice for someone in an MLM, or kind of anything that you would like to talk about before we end it?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that, just really pay attention to what the business focuses on. It's never about the products. It's always about the dream. And you all say this every single video almost. They're selling a dream. They're selling a dream. If you are in a business where they're selling you an opportunity or a dream, run the other way. That is an immediate red flag. And I mean, here's the thing. You have to understand that these people who have been in this business for a long time are professional motivators. They know how to make you feel good. They know how to make you feel confident. I remember, when I first joined, and I was right, but I thought I remember thinking, there's no way I can do this. This is impossible. I don't know enough people. How am I ever going to do this? And I was just encouraged. Like I was encouraged and, oh no, you can do it, Lee. You just have to keep trying. You just have to keep going. But it's not possible. And so I would encourage people to think about this. Oh, and I want to add this too. This is kind of a funny little aside with that.
Mm-hmm.
So remember I said we were in an office and there were like 100 people. Well, there was another office. There were other Primerica offices because I'm from a fairly big metropolitan area. So there were other Primerica offices, which were walking in the same malls, the same, outlet centers, the same strip malls. And so it was completely saturated. When we would go in and try to hunt down these poor retail workers, the other Primerica office had sent 50 people into that mall as well. And so it just was impossible to be successful. So yeah, that's basically what I would say. Keep in mind that it's never about the product. If it's not about the product, you really need to look into this and to, what is this really?
Yeah. And no, that's good advice because it's the how can we sell this lifestyle? And I've never heard anyone say it like you just said it, that these people at the top are professional motivators. But you're right. That's literally what it is. It's every single time you're in the office, or for people whose MLMs are just virtual and you're on these calls, these weekly team calls, it's all about how this week can I motivate this team to do more or keep going.
And these people are coasting because they have so many people underneath them. They don't really have to do the business. All they do is they look for ways to motivate the team and to keep people in the system. But they don't really have to do a lot of work themselves because they're coasting at the top.
Okay, you guys, and that was the end of the interview. I want to thank Lee for hopping on this interview with me and really just sharing her story. So thank you so much. I know it is not an easy thing to share your story, and when someone wants to share their story, it makes me so happy to be able to share their story here on my platform and do interviews like this. Anyways, that's going to be all for me today. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to comment down below and support Lee. I love always seeing that in the comment section whenever we have someone who's been interviewed, because again, it's not easy for people to share their story, or for them to even email me to say that they want to share it is never an easy thing. So let's definitely give support in the comment section down below. I will see you guys in Monday's video.